Good afternoon. This is the fourth in a series entitled The Woman with 1.5 Hands. If you've already caught the opening remarks of the second or third installment of this series, you know the routine. However, if you think you can just skip around and not watch the first vid first, the second one second, etc., you perhaps will be sorely mistaken. And by perhaps, I mean, pretty sure you're going to get lost. So go back. If you haven't already, and watch the other ones first. Anyway, here's part 4, or a different approach. Completely different camera angle. Gradually shrinking shot of CSI forensics cops whisking away at the slats and metal posts of a chain-link fence with their dainty camel hair brushes. A grizzled detective, holding aloft a plastic baggie containing a swatch of gray fabric, says to her partner, "Looks like the perp ripped his sweatpants coming over that concertina wire." Heavy smoker. In the background, the cheering of thousands crescendos. A touchdown? Then levels off, then grows quiet. Scene gets smaller and smaller, becomes a pinpoint, then is gone. Fade-out sequence complete. Next scene starts as a pinhole, but rapidly opens to what can best be described as sheer disappointment, or an unglamorous view of a disheartening spreadsheet. Statistics. Sorry, had to do it. Couldn't very well film 21 or 22 videos without including some stats, which I'll dive right into, but first a few words about statistics in general. Minor symptoms include drowsiness, sudden and or prolonged confrontation with microfont, text not arranged in pleasing to the eye paragraphs, reams of graphs and pie charts, seemingly neither gathered nor presented with a specific theme in mind. Major symptoms include there is a specific theme in mind, i.e. an agenda, a theme that would appear to be little more than a tidy latticework of a set of preconceived notions. Perhaps in this theme/agenda, one might find traces of the omission of stats that don't buttress that particular agenda. Yes, with any statistical analysis, there's a lot of missing that can go on. Misinformation, misdirection, convenient miscalculations. In other words, it just might be impossible to avoid any and all tendentiousness. And I realize that none of this is new to anyone who's gotten this far. Of course, statistics can be used to prove just about anything. Some statistical fudging, if you will, can reveal more about the underlying motives of its researchers or compilers than it says on the page, while other statistical fudging can show that a researcher's heart is in the right place. The following is an example of such statistical sleight of hand. After receiving sponsorship from both the National Institute of Justice and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, yep, that one, the CDC in Atlanta, Patricia Jaden and Nancy Tone conducted a national telephone survey of 8,000 women during the late 90s. Their names are TJADEN and THOENNES, respectively, and their survey was called the National Violence Against Women Survey, or the NVAWS. During their 8,000 phone calls, and delineated in their findings, quote, rape was defined as an event that occurred without the victim's consent that involved the use or threat of force in vaginal, anal, or oral intercourse. This definition, wrote Jaden Tone, closely resembles the definition used in the National Women's Study, or the NWS. However, unlike the NWS, our NVAW survey reports both attempted and completed rapes. Thus, unless otherwise noted in our NVAWS report, rape refers to both attempted and completed rape, end of quote. Jaden and Tone, and I hope I'm pronouncing their names correctly, go on to state that 14.8% of the 8,000 women in their survey said they'd been the victims of at least one completed rape in their lifetime, while 2.8% said they'd been the victims of attempted rape only. These researchers then, after doing the math, 14.8 plus 2.8, reached the conclusion that 17.6% of American women have been raped. While I do have mixed feelings concerning this particular part of their NVAWS report, as you'll hear shortly, I must quickly squelch or attenuate any suspense as to my overall take on Jaden and Tone ending up with a figure of 17.6%. I say they do so deservedly and rightfully, and though I do have some stipulations about their methodology, eventually I end up with a larger figure than theirs, as you'll see in the next few videos. But for now, 17.6% is good enough to get us going. It's a good place to start. Here's why. If a judicial or legislative brief containing either this manipulation or interpretation of the stats were being considered for admittance as evidence in court, I'd opt for the letter of the law, so to speak. In other words, 14.8% does not equal 17.6%, especially if putting a possibly innocent person behind bars were in the offing. But since all Jaden and Tone did was conduct a phone survey intended to increase public awareness of rape, then I'm all for the spirit of the law in this case, and for a variety of reasons. Here's one of those reasons. A victim of attempted rape might also have been battered, stripped of her clothing and more, everything but penetration, while the bullet of a gunman could completely miss his intended victim, who escaped unscathed, physically anyway, all of which may lead, rightfully so in my opinion, to that shooter being tried for attempted murder. Moreover, if I donned some robes and were presiding over a quartet of such cases, and as I care more about cleaning up the streets than I do about any one convicted felon's lost tax-paying potential, I would sentence the murderer to 25 years, the attempted murderer to 23 years, the rapist to 25 years, and the attempted rapist to 23 years, provided there were no relevant mitigating circumstances. I think intent and capability, among other factors, need to be placed on the scales of justice. Throwing with murderous intent a paper airplane is not attempted murder. Attach a poisoned dart to that airplane, or say, put some rice in it, and even though it completely missed its mark, it still might be a case worth hearing. If her repeated entreaties to cease his rapacious advances were not heeded, and it's reasoned that the likely catalyst or driving force that eventually stopped him from completing his rape was, say, her roommate unexpectedly came home early, then, with me on the grand jury, I'm already leaning toward sending this case of attempted rape to trial. Sending it to trial, i.e. not just leaning that way, would happen if enough other grand jurors agreed with me that the following additional evidence truly sealed the deal. Her roommate goes on to testify that she saw him sexually battering the victim, and doctors confirm that her injuries are not consistent with consensual rough sex, or its approximate, but rather her injuries were likely to have been very painful, and after he broke her left arm, she probably did not ask him to break her right arm. My point is, reports, and this is something I will revisit, my point is reports of attempted rape are so heinous and hurt so many so much, and not just psychologically but physically as well in many cases, that for Jaden and Tone to combine reports of attempted rapes with reports of completed rapes, and then call each one of those instances an instance of rape, receives my approval because, one, this slight increase is reasonable. It's not like they're ballooning the numbers from 14.8% to 80 or 90% of American women get raped. And two, because of this reasonable boost results in even one erstwhile unaware person becoming aware of the continuing problem of violence against women, and then this more socially conscious person goes on to do something that decreases the number of women who actually get raped, then their slight alteration of the statistics will have been worth it. So far. Now some of that may change here in a bit, and you'll see why. The above is my reason why I think it's a good thing Jaden and Tone got out the bicycle pump, so to speak. Their reason, though they didn't expressly state as much, I base on them first itemizing various limitations of their survey, which I'll get to here in a second, these limitations that is, and then immediately revealing that they were making the executive decision to treat the aforementioned 14.8% as if it were 17.6%. Since they happened to not spell out why they did what they did in those exact words, I am hereby inferring or connecting the dots for them. Put simply, the limitations of their survey leave uncounted a good number of estimated completed rapes. Hence, they felt confident to go with the 17.6% figure instead of that 14.8% figure. Okay, here are those limitations of their survey. They could phone only those who were over 18 and lived in a private residence where a phone was connected. This excludes, quote, attempted/completed rapes of children and adolescents, and attempted/completed rapes of women who are homeless or living in institutions like prisons or mental hospitals, or they're living in group facilities like college dorms or halfway houses, or they live in households without telephones. End of quote. Of particular import is that last one, no phone. This almost assuredly shorts rape stats. A woman's chances of being raped are tripled if she makes less than $15,000 a year. Odds are that if any woman is going to be sans phone, it'll be one who makes less than $15,000 a year. Ditto if she's homeless. Homelessness both increases her odds of being raped and of not owning a phone, thus excluding a relatively likely victim from participation in their survey. Also worth adding extra emphasis to is their age limit. Since the largest demographic of rape victimization is females age 16 to 24, this leaves out quite a few 16 and 17-year-olds. Half of all women who told these researchers they'd been raped say their first rape occurred before their 18th birthday. Which brings up what I alluded to a bit ago, mixed feelings. Again, even though I eventually sided with Jade and Tone on this particular stat, in that, if anything, I think at least 17.6% of American women have been raped, if not more, it was not without deliberation. Specifically, I'd like to downplay or downgrade in status the nonviolent sexual acts that happened between a self-identified willing but not legally old enough to consent 17-year-old female and her consenting 19-year-old boyfriend if it's said that he raped her. Jaden and Tone and the parents of this 17-year-old might disagree with me, but that's okay. Though they didn't phone those under 18, they included in their statistics the rapes said by the adult women they phoned to have occurred before they reached age 18 without stipulating whether these were all forcible rapes of minors or statutory violations without force, or some of both. My balking at this juncture may seem petty or perhaps even nefarious, but wait, she can be 16 years old, pregnant, and legally get married in Maryland without any parental guardian consent. With the consent of the court and a parent or guardian, this same female, even if she's not pregnant, can get married anywhere in the U.S. at age 16. Right? And then visit her 18-year-old husband in jail? And the only reason he's locked up is because he willingly had sex with his willing 16-year-old wife? Clearly here, I'm highlighting exceptions to the bulk, rare anomalies that don't merit very much attention, but also shouldn't be completely disregarded. To design one's whole approach to an issue based on rare exceptions to the rule is often misguided. Now here comes a rather lengthy sidebar. So lengthy, in fact, I decided it needed its own video. It's called The Woman with 1.5 Hands, Part 5, Sidebar. Part 6 will pick up right where we left off, right here, with this 16 and 18-year-old married couple.